Good morning, all over the world. Good evening, wherever you're listening from. My name is Stephen Betterell. Again, I am the Chief Market Analyst for Auvoria Prime and essentially your risk manager. So let's go through the risk disclosure, please. It's on the screen if you're not looking at it. Trading in the foreign exchange markets carries a high risk and may not be suitable for all investors. Trading on margin and utilizing leverage can carry an even higher level of risk that can lead to a complete loss of investment funds. Before deciding to trade the foreign exchange market or using any of our software alert products, you should carefully and diligently consider your personal investment objectives, levels of experience, and risk tolerance. There is a possibility that you could potentially sustain significant loss. You should not invest or trade any capital you cannot afford to lose. It is your responsibility to be aware of all the underlying risks associated with foreign exchange trading and to seek professional advice from an independent certified financial advisor if you have any doubts, which essentially is what I do. So now that we got the risk disclosure out, let's talk about the markets. So I think globally, as we begin to lift restrictions, I know there's some states in the United States that are lifting more restrictions than others. Again, I say that our hearts and prayers go out to anybody that's been affected by the virus. We know there's some pretty tough stories out there, but I promise you folks, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. So there's a lot of countries reporting considerably lower death rates. Central banks have been injecting tremendous amounts of liquidity into the market. When I switch over to the next screen here, which is the Forex Factory's weekly calendar, hopefully we can see that okay. You'll see that we have, as far as the filtered out folders, which I talked a little bit on last week's call, how to filter them out. You just go up in the right-hand corner to the little green area and set filters and click apply. Gets rid of a lot of noise. You can see directly what's going on. The important thing here is that 3 central banks have important press conferences, policy statements, different types of meetings this week. Both the European Central Bank, the Federal Reserve, which is in the United States, the European Central Bank, which is in the Euro Union zone, and the Bank of Japan, which is at the top of the screen you can see here. So in the weekly back office text version of this, I'm actually importing a picture of this window now, so it's a little easier to see in the text version that you'll get in Auvoria Prime's back office to what I'm actually showing on the screen. Why does this matter? So as a user of a software, I always think that you don't necessarily have to do the deepest dive as far as global events, but I think it's important to just understand how central banks affect money supply, which is often referred to as M1. And money supply dictates heavily whether assets get deflated, prices going down, inflated, prices going up, or that type of corresponding correlation into the currency markets as far as their directional movements, right? The volatility is still expected to be very volatile, although I'm very impressed by the crowd that are posting results in the Auvoria Prime results page in Facebook. I would highly encourage to continue to do that. That's good. Just please make sure that you put the disclaimer in there that this software is not available in the US if it isn't, or if you're using Einstein overseas, that you put the disclaimer window in as well. But I would encourage, keep putting feedback in there. It's good. With the Facebook page, it actually, we've built a little algo, I guess, if you will, to pull it into the Telegram channel for that. So keep posting results. Don't post any settings. I think at some point with some of the really good results I'm seeing, which have settings that are a little bit outside of the parameters, going to try and contact a few of you guys to find out what you're doing in settings land as we continue to dive into that a little bit further. I will begin to show, let me just jump back to the screen first. I will begin to show a couple of my FX book accounts here and there as we get into sort of getting more comfortable with the settings, getting the accounts, set up correctly and verified, which is always a bit of a task when you're dealing with myfxbook.com. But I want to begin to be able to show the results of some of the verified, both track record and verified accounts, whether it be live or demo to get a feel for that. These are only going to be accounts that have the basic settings up on the screen that you guys currently see. So, and it was sort of negotiated today that I'm going to be doing a series of videos, a couple minutes each, on each of the settings inside of the VPS that you're looking at here with the MT4 platform. So I'll shoot a video on each, talking about pros, cons, why it's set at this particular point. I'm going to have some more meetings with some of the developers coming up in the next couple of weeks. So look for that. Hopefully in the next month, we can get that finished and produced and put up into the back office, which I think would be great. So, Brian, if you wouldn't mind, I know you had some thoughts on the settings this week. We don't have a lot to add from what we talked about last Saturday, so I would highly suggest that you go look at the video, which is up in the Auvoria Prime back office, of last week's presentation, and or encourage all of your group, upline, downline, all the managers, really encourage everybody to participate in this call, because I think it's really important we all get just really dialed in to get these settings set conservative, more importantly, understand how it affects in a lot of the global events. But my sort of suggestion again is, do with a lot of the volatility that's going to be this week, I'd really keep the settings conservative again, folks. So the FOMC, which is the Federal Open Market Committee, meeting on April 29th, and then the press briefing that will follow, may induce a lot of cross-asset volatility, meaning just bringing volatility to the currency markets. So, there's a good chance the U.S. dollar may rise if Chairman Powell paints a worrisome picture for global growth in light of the coronavirus pandemic. As I mentioned earlier, the central banks are sort of pumping trillions of dollars of liquidity into the financial systems. So that's my sort of quick, short, and sweet. Anything this week you want to add, Ryan, as far as the settings?
I don't think so, Steve. You're the expert, and so I enjoy following your lead as well.
Okay.
And I'll just say this, right? This is for everybody out there listening, and this would be the same in any week. If you don't understand precisely why you would be changing a setting from the default, don't change it, or seek out an explanation from somebody who's perhaps using the software over a longer period of time that can help you through the process of understanding a setting before you change it. And I agree with some of the comments coming through the chat, Steve. Many people are excited about the idea of having access to instructional videos that will explain in an overview capacity what each setting does, what it's for, and how it affects the trading. And so the community of Auvoria Prime users around the world are already expressing significant excitement to have access to that instructional content. So you're going to have the Auvoria Prime community become even bigger fans of yours, Steve, than they already are. And so between now and then, folks, again, just understand, unless you precisely have a reason for why you would be changing a setting, my general sense is then it's probably better to just not do it.
Yeah, I can't, it's interesting now that we're beginning to look through a larger data set, right, Ryan, of some of the people that are posting, and, obviously our own accounts that are linked up to different analyses. You guys are going to hear me talk a lot about myfxbook.com. It's actually a really good website when it's working, to actually pull the data in and see an unbiased view, but still a secure view of a demo or a live account and how it's trading. But you're seeing a lot of posts in the AP results page on Facebook, which is cool. I think what we should start to show, and I'll sort of throw this challenge out to anyone that has a MyFX book account hooked up, like you see here, or there's another one actually I can show. Let's move into this one as well. This is a live 6K account trade. Let me see if I can blow up the screen a bit. Notice at the top of the screen, try to get rid of some of this commercials. that the track record is verified right here and that the trading privileges are verified. This is kind of a difficult thing to get working. I know we've had a problem with a couple of my accounts, but I want to be able to show once these get completely worked out how everything's doing. And I'll begin to go through with those that are interested. For those that aren't interested in doing this deep of a dive, you can turn the webinar off at this point. But in the future, I'm going to begin to get into just some basics of understanding how good the software is working from just a real macro level. Try not to do too much of a deeper dive. But I think this is a great way because unlike back when I used to be really heavy into the discretionary trading game running a long short fund about 10 years ago, we didn't have anything like this. So when we were presenting how well we've done in terms of a lot of the equity and futures that we were trading for clients, I had no way other than just actually pulling out statements, which is, just a lot of privacy issues there. And so I always thought this was a great idea, as long as it's working right. So I'll talk more about that, but I'm not going to get into it this week. But if you guys could start sharing your screens, if you have a track record verified and a trading privileges verified fxbook.com account, that would be something that would be helpful for us to see on the Facebook feed as well. So it's pretty much it. I think we can kind of sign off. If you guys don't have any, we'll get work on those videos. I think at some point I still want to take some polls, which we have not set up yet. That's mostly my fault. I need to get to sort of work on building some polls because I want to take everybody's temperature on where they stand, who's running the demo versus live, how long it's been running, how effective have the settings been for you, which we're seeing some real positive results from already, which is good. But I continue to foster feedback from the community will help me do my job better on these 2 weekly calls. But other than that,
so
anything else you got to add, Ryan?
There's a couple of comments, Steve, that we'll touch on since we got through everything pretty efficiently today, which I appreciate. Excellent job, my friend. I love it. Very straightforward. I'm encouraged that you don't see anything excessively noteworthy when you look at the markets this week. So a couple of questions. One person's asking, would you completely avoid the markets this week? Because a couple of the items here on the screen you've kind of given reference to. Do you see like an overly excessive level of volatility that would cause you concern for even being in the markets this week?
I can give you a short and sweet answer to that, Ryan, and I can give you one that'll take a half an hour.
Let's do the short and sweet.
Okay. So the key thing to that in most of these currencies that are traded out here, and we're just looking at the basic ones, and we just switch to a day chart. You guys will see I use finviz.com a lot because you can look at everything in one shot, which I prefer to see. And problem with this site is there's just tons of commercials. Let me just get rid of the screen. The key thing to answering that question is if I see the vast majority of the main pairs, like the euro US dollar as an example, it's trading in a channel or with some sort of recent channel-based movements, is a little better viewed on the hourly chart. I don't know if you guys can kind of see if you draw a line at the top, draw a line at the bottom. It's kind of a channel. As long as it's trading within a channel, yes, it could be some pretty big volatility based upon what the central banks are talking about this week. But I'm actually inclined to leave the software on. Just keep the settings conservative because most of the really bad news out there is priced in the markets. And if these central banks have any idea what's good for them as far as the masses, they're not going to do anything outside of the box. They've all signaled they want to be accommodated, right? They've all signaled that they want to drop liquidity in the markets and make sure markets are acting efficiently. This is the single two most important things that can be happening as far as global trading right now, is support of all of the markets by the European Bank of Japan as well as the Federal Reserve. So there's other functions of these banks, obviously, but right now, the key is keep liquidity running smooth and keep financial markets of all instruments and trades running smoothly. Those are the two primary functions of what's happening. So as long as, and I haven't really heard anything on the street. A lot of my buddies I trade with, that's going to be a real outlier that would lead me to believe that, the systems should be turned off this week. The beauty is we have an equity protected factor now inside the software, which is just a fabulous thing. to keep the risk tight. Sorry, that was the shortest answer I can muster.
I think that's great. I think again, your insight's valuable. And I think the main thing, again, that you just kind of pointed out, that you don't anticipate the monetary policymakers doing anything, that departs from kind of what traders expect. And so I think if I've learned anything from being around you, Steve, and kind of being around the space, it's that in general, the markets dislike uncertainty. And so what I hear you saying is that you don't anticipate a whole lot of uncertainty at this point based on the meetings that are taking place. And so that's a good thing. Here's a couple of other ones that we'll go through. And we'll make sure that we wrap this up here pretty succinctly, but there's some good questions in here today, which is great. We didn't really have that last week. So another one is, and I can probably even take this one because this is just a kind of a common best practice, right? The question is, does manual trading affect the robots? Here's the easy answer. It would be wisest for you to just do your manual trading on a different account. Let's not try to find out the hard way, right? The answer is maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But the best answer is that just to be safe, if you want to manually trade, I would not do that on the same account that you have the software running. Let's not give the software any added things that might cause it to hiccup, right? So the next one, let's see, I had another one. Here it is. So this is a great question, and it pertains to navigating through the second half of the week. And so Brian, who asked this question, you're going to love the answer, Brian. Here's what I love. Steve also does another one of these sessions at the same exact starting time, which is 1 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesdays, for the specific reason to address the questions that you asked. What do we do if our trailing stop has not triggered? I think you mean your trailing equity has not been triggered by Wednesday. What do we do? That is the exact purpose of the strategy session that Steve will be doing with the Auvoria Prime community every single Tuesday at the same exact time. And so the good news with that is that you don't need to try to make a future decision right now, right? We're going to utilize the information that Steve has given us this morning so that we can enter into the start of the next trading week based on what Steve has already shared. And then once there's a chance to kind of process and evaluate what the market did between Sunday afternoon, if you're in the western part of the world, and the midday on Tuesday here in the western part of the world, then Steve will give us kind of his updated viewpoint of how do we best complete our trading week. And so great questions, Brian, and you'll get to tune back in on Tuesday for your answers, as will everybody else. And that's a really, really great resource that we have by virtue of Steve being here and part of our community as the chief market analyst. Do you have anything you want to add to that, Steve, while I scan through the questions one last time before we wrap up today?
Yeah, I definitely would not mirror any semi-automated trading with a discretionarily traded in the same brokerage account. Wouldn't do it. So, just like in the institutional world, when I manage money for clients and we custody everything at TD Ameritrade, we have the institutional side of the business, right? So they may have their own retail account on the other side of TD. But as far as the professionally managed accounts I run for them, it's on the institutional side. So I would ask you to sort of take that same approach. Just have two retail accounts. One can be running discretionary, and the other. But the great thing about most brokers, it's really easy to set up a second account. A couple of clicks, you could set up a demo or a live account and fund it pretty quickly. So I think at some point, we get a lot of these questions. I know I may be taking some down the path of confusion, and for that I apologize. But eventually, you guys will start to get that. We're going to be talking a little bit more about technical analysis and just real broad understanding of whether markets are balancing, as you see the US dollar yen right chart here on the screen, whether markets are balancing in a tight range or if they're just crazy and wild. We're just looking at an hour chart here, but I think I'd probably doing the community a disservice if I don't at least try to basically lead you down the path of discovery from a technical analysis perspective. And we'll just be real general. So a lot of times I'll be like, well, should I get asked this question, like, should I have the software on or off? And I almost always will look at that by taking a look at the news events, more importantly, what happened last week. And then at the same time, what is the markets doing? So when the yen's in a very tight range, it's a basing pattern essentially in this hourly chart. Yeah, it certainly could break out from it. But, I don't see um, any volatility that's just super crazy that would lead me to at least not want to trade this pair or the Euro US dollar, which is still my favorite pair to trade. It has the most liquidity. If you look at the futures markets versions of the currency pairs, the Euro, which trades on the CME under the symbol the 6E, is the most liquid contract on the futures side space, which in many brokerage firms that are forex based, you guys cannot trade futures. So if I'm referring to that, it's just sort of a different markets that are traded mostly via the Chicago Mercantile Exchange. Okay, so it's a channel essentially that we're trading in, a basing channel, a basing pattern, tight range. See how I could just go on and on, Ryan? I have a tendency to run down this path, so I just got to shut myself up, right?
It's great, though, man. People are loving it. People are absolutely loving it. So another question. We'll go till the middle of the hour, right? Because it's great. We're getting a lot of interaction from the community, and there's a lot of great questions coming through. So we're going to keep you for like another 5 minutes, and we'll tackle a couple more of these.
Yeah, let's answer some more questions.
I love it. So we have another question here where someone's inquiring as to the differences between Alexander and Einstein. And here's the good news. Steve is in both softwares, and he'll be conducting extensive, kind of his own various hypotheticals and different beta tests. And so you guys will have that to look forward to, so they can help you start to understand if you're an Einstein user. Are there any nuances that might be unique to Einstein that would be different to Alexander? You'll have that to look forward to. And as Steve has repeatedly said in just a handful of sessions that he's already done here with Auvoria Prime, that the size of the data set is relevant. The size of the data set is important. So what do I mean by that? Or what does Steve mean by that more accurately? He means that as he's able to aggregate more data from his own use of this current version of the software, he's going to be able to unveil better insights to you guys, but it takes time, right? 1 week of trading does not a strategy make, right? So Steve, right. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add to that.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that the key thing is any statistical significance in anything, right? Just talk stats. I know a lot of people hate stats, but it's an important subject, especially when it comes to trading results. You need a large data set to make any kind of empirical evidence about something, right? Essentially, if I'm going to make a statement that, hey, we've seen Einstein and Alexander trade in tandem. The difficult thing with me was, and maybe someone out there suffer from this as well, you really need to make sure that you have with you almost everywhere some sort of way to approve the Alexander trades. That for me was a challenge I got over real quick because thankfully Ryan and the team helped me out. But there's just not a large enough data set on. We've only been trading for a couple of weeks, guys. So we've got to see a larger data set out there. And we're talking a few months to even begin to form any kind of hypothesis on the differences between two software, right? Heck, we may need to look at it for a year. But I've been assured by the developers that it's essentially the same software. One, you're just approving executions, and the other one is doing a little more automated.
So that's perfect. And again, we'll look forward to the continued ability to understand the software better over time. And so on that, one last thought for you, Stephen, we'll call this kind of the parting thought for today, which is, what's your personal, opinion or your personal method of operation as it relates to allowing yourself to continue running a demo account so you can keep learning, right? It seems like a lot of times people want to understand more, but they also want to trade live money. And I know for me personally, I'm just perfectly okay with paying for my education. What do I mean by that? Well, the software costs me the same as it does everybody else, right? My software subscription every month, $189. That is a small price of tuition, in my opinion, even if I'm using that software license on only a demo account where it's not technically making me money for a month or 2 or 3 with a long-term view, a very small price to pay to gain my own personal level of understanding. What's your perspective on that, Steve?
I may not have a relatable perspective on that kind of cost because I have been used to paying $600, $700, $800 a month for data feeds, trading platforms, and execution platforms, and analysis software. There's these costs are important, and obviously, I have a lot of friends that are traders coming to me looking at this right now, like, this sounds fantastic. I want to get on board, but a lot of traders are notoriously cheap bastards, right? So they're whining about the 190-ish bucks a month. I'm like, look, if you have the ability to not have to sit in front of a computer like a discretionary trader all day, and have a software just bring the ideas to you, or execute that particular trade, I'd pay hundreds of dollars a month for that. And so you got to bring it into perspective. But I have a tendency to want to see a larger data set. So if you had asked me the same question, Ryan, 6 months ago, I would have said, well, I would want to run a demo account for a little bit longer because I just didn't know. I mean, I'd seen all the great things that came out of the first gens of the software at the old company. I was really impressed. And then through meetings with the developers and some of the new great features they put on, that's just been fantastic in terms of protecting the account's equity, which is game changer stuff, by the way. That's all. I mean, think about all the money that was spent and time to develop that, and you're getting it for 190 bucks a month. That's a deal. I mean, there are hedge funds out there that pay millions of dollars a year in coding costs to have high frequency systems built. So, I would say just pay it, or go find 3 people. I mean, this is difficult to do. You show this to enough people, and they're gonna be like, wow, this is great. So just go find 3 people, and then it'll be affordable, right?
That I couldn't agree with more, my friend. The 3 for free program that Auvoria Prime offers our customers is a game changer for sure. And so I appreciate you touching on that. And with that, folks, we've been on now for about 30 minutes. We will always do our best to try to field as many of your questions that we can. I apologize if some of you had questions that we were not able to get to. And Richard, we are working on some kind of an Ask Steve mechanism that will enable you to possibly through the back office. We're exploring different ways to do this efficiency without turning it into a 500-hour work week for Steve. So we've got to find a happy medium and a way to have some balance to the process. But we are working diligently on equipping everyone with some type of a process where you can kind of submit questions throughout the week, and we'll have a way that in some way, shape, or form. So we're working through that. Stay tuned for that. But thank you to everybody who asked your questions. Continue to keep track of your questions. We'll get to them this week. Perhaps we'll be able to get to them on a future session. And with that, just understand, everybody who tuned in today, we value you. You are the most important part of Auvoria Prime Legacy Act. And of course, always a special thanks to our Chief Market Analyst, Mr. Steve Vetterl, my good friend. Steve, thanks for being on today and for everything you shared with everybody.
All right, guys, be safe.